it's Wednesday, and you know what that means? I didn't get postponed. What? Welcome to the breakdown, everyone. I'm Catherine, aka the High Heeled Gamer, and today I'm not alone. Well, I am because I'm quarantined because I'm not sick, but everybody else is. But I have a guest today. He's not my BFF because every other guest has been my BFF. But one day, you and I are going to be BFFs. It's Joel Westfox. Dun, dun, dun.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing today, Joel?
It's been a pretty good day. It's been a nice little day. Yeah.
Are you working from home? Are you quarantined even though you're not sick?
Mostly, yeah. There's a lot of homework right now. As well, I have some smaller projects I've been working on, but I work in production mostly. So film production, producing, and right now everything is pretty much on hold for, well, indefinitely, really, a lot of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that seems to be the going trend. Everything is on hold, canceled, postponed. We don't know what's going on. Just wash your hands is what
it's a waiting game right now, for sure.
It really is. Like I mean, like, yeah, I'm smiling and laughing, but I do feel bad for people that are essential personnel and actually have to go out there into the world, retail people who are having to go out there into the world, and then people who have all these projects, who put their hearts and souls into these things only for it to poof, kind of disappear for a little bit.
Yeah.
So some of the big stuff we're going to talk about, let's get right into it. It's the box office. So movies.
Not a good week for. It's not going to be a good time this year for Hollywood. That's for sure. Financially, it's going to be a struggle.
And, yeah.
You know, this last weekend, you know, I think they had, the global box. I think it's just going to sink. So like, Bloodshot had a global box office of 24 million, which is, you know, for a cost of 45 million, and most likely since theaters are fully shutting down now. I think New York is fully shut down.
Yeah, New York is done.
And I think San Francisco as well. You're going to see the coastal regions just continue to fall down. I think, close more and more. They're not going to make their money on these ones unless they long tail them and say, hey, we're going to bring these back, which, you know, I don't think there was a high demand on these movies initially. I don't know if, honestly, Bloodshot, I didn't even know about it till about probably 2 weeks ago.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Same. For me, the big one that I was looking forward to was Onward, because it was something kind of different, something kind of refreshing, and I never even made it close to the movie theater with Onward, and that also didn't. It's not even close to. It was number one. So the headline that I read was number one despite crisis. And I'm like,
oh, geez.
well, okay. Yeah. So apparently what movie theaters were doing, because Onward had come out right at the beginning of this whole, there's a virus going on, we still are not sure, just, wash your hands. Mm-hmm. And what movie theaters were doing was only selling a certain amount of tickets. So instead of filling up the movie theater, they had, I think it was like 20 seats available, and you had to spread yourself throughout. And that's why I can't even remember how much it made opening weekend, in all honesty.
I know it currently it's at globally, it's at 103 as of this last weekend, I believe. And that's another, these are hugely expensive movies plus marketing. So that's a movie that I know we're going to talk about, streaming, like, will movies go to streaming? And this is one that it's already out. They should put it on there on Disney Plus as soon as possible. Encourage people to pop onto it, because obviously, as you can see on the screen there, Black Widow, that's the big question, huge movie for Marvel. It's kind of the end of the current phase of their current phase, really. This character's already passed away, at least in all all elements of the story so far. Who knows who's going to stay dead or not? We know in comic books that death is a very short-lived thing. So this might lead to, my hopes in the movie that maybe it leads to possibilities of how she can come back. Again, we don't know. But I would be surprised with a movie that costs this much if they'll send it to streaming. It would be such
Yeah.
a hit to the financials for them.
It really would be. And then you don't know when. That's
Mm-hmm.
the other big problem. It's like, okay, let's postpone, let's cancel. But for the people that are postponing, when is the question? And that's really what's hurting even more. It's like, okay, we're postponing it, but until when?
And
So
win can be huge because depending where you move that movie to next, you could be fighting other movies that are in Disney's case, since they're so huge and their plate is so huge. I mean, they have what, one or two movies come out a month now that
yeah.
are under their umbrella of the company, and it's hard to which movies cannibalize each other, which ones are like, okay, we're gonna sacrifice this movie to save this movie. That's a tricky thing, and not a job that I would be excited to have to handle, to be honest, because you're dealing with the sums of money we're talking about. One weekend off, they could be fighting against the Bond movies got moved, so
Yeah.
you're gonna fight against that one. I
I
think.
think the Thor movie got like there's no like it hasn't
Oh yeah.
even started. I know it's not a movie, but Winter Soldier and Falcon
Mm-hmm.
got stopped. Like so they were in production and they stopped it
Correct.
completely. So a lot of TV shows are popping up now too that they're stopping production or they're pushing
Mm-hmm.
production and stuff like that. So that's a big hit as well.
And I can only imagine that even though some of these ones, like the Loki show, I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
far along they were with that on Disney Plus, and also WandaVision. I don't know how long far along with it. They had completed filming or they're in post production. But
Yeah.
even if they're working post production, it's so much harder to keep on timelines when you're working from home. Even if they're able to help these people and these editors and visual effects artists are working from home, that's such a you're still losing time. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd be surprised if I'd say probably any movie that was supposed to come out in the next six, or TV show or movie, especially Disney and any studio, I'd be surprised if they come out on time right now. It wouldn't surprise me if we see this turn into a long, the dominoes delay, because
Mm-hmm.
what's movie is sacrificed. Movies. I think the one movie that hasn't moved from Disney, which is oh, I just spaced the name. It's the one where he is magical and he goes into the space. He's like a criminal mastermind. But that movie hasn't moved.
you
Yeah, I
got
know.
got me.
I know.
I'm
No
like,
one even knows
what
what
did
it
I
is, pretty
miss?
much. But that one hasn't moved, and I think it's still set for later, a couple months from now. And that one hasn't moved. And that movie is the one that got moved 2 or 3 times, and that I think that's going to be the barometers. They're gonna put a couple movies that are low tier out there and go, are people ready to go back into see movies right now? Because it all depends how long is that's, you can't make up, even with streaming and selling them. Like we were talking about that kind of pre-show, we were just kind of speculating, and I'm like, okay, even if they're able to sell a movie for $30 on video on demand, they still need tens of millions of sales to make their money back, and those are households. So you have 3 people watching a movie, 4 or 5. If you have a family, you could have 6 people watching a movie at the same cost of when you go to a theater and you're spending $100.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, I think a lot of businesses just in the whole industry are gonna feel it through this process. And it's, I'm sure there's a lot of people sweating bullets, because I know in some elements I definitely feel it myself. So
Yeah. So how much of like post production do you know? Do you know how many people tend to work on post production? And can something like this be done file sharing? Is that something that could be possible?
I would say on, the smaller, I mean, this is speculation on my part. I don't know exact numbers.
Gotcha.
I would say anything that doesn't involve super heavy VFX, and it depends what phase they are. Cause there's guys who can probably do modeling. If they're rotoscoping, those kind of elements from home, they could do, like I said, the modeling, that kind of stuff. But if they're doing stuff, they have to have an actor in with them, or they're using, cause now they're using so many different techniques nowadays. You look at Mandalorian, was kind of a visual showcase with that, where they were using really proprietary technology, where they were filming on set with the actors, but using the visual effects in the background live with this monitors and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so I'm sure a lot of that requires a lot of proprietary hardware that most of these people don't have at home or might,
Gotcha.
have access to. I think smaller films, they could technically send an editor home if they're not visually or VFX heavy.
Okay.
I could see them, especially like maybe like not like award nominee films, Oscar nominee films that are kind of
Mhm.
usually very actor heavy. I could see those doing really well in the sense of getting work done at home because you're able to, you guys can focus on it. They can give them, 10 terabytes of data and say, okay, here you go. And use the, like I said, the streaming types of editing and stuff like that. But,
Okay.
it's hard to say because you said the whole industry. I don't think that it's usually a normal thing to send stuff home because obviously there's the whole level of security out there,
Oh,
you know,
true.
that leaking stuff, especially things like Marvel, who is very good with their security when it
I
comes
didn't
to
even think
leaks.
about that.
Um,
Yeah, I definitely didn't think about like little. So I know this is gonna sound really funny, but I didn't think about that. Like and the only reason why I know this is because I have a teenage kid. The Jonas Brothers, when they were trying to do their whole comeback, one of the brothers was talking with their wife, and the 5-year-old heard it, and the 5-year-old went to the school and told
oh,
everyone. So like this whole
yeah,
school knew before. So I didn't even think about that could
that's a great
happen too
example.
with the Marvel movies. They could have like a screen up and they go use the restroom or get a drink and somebody else comes sees it. Next thing you know, that
And
makes
kids, man,
sense.
if I'm sure a lot of people have kids, just like you're saying, and you're gonna be a really, really popular kid if you're like, hey, I have a screenshot of my dad or mom who's
Yeah,
working on this film or something. Yeah.
that's true.
It
Ugh.
all comes down to time. The longer this stays into, longer that people are, on both voluntarily quarantined and actively quarantined will definitely dictate how long this affects industry. Because, I'm saying, yeah, most likely I don't see them putting, Mulan or Black Widow on Disney Plus. But if this conversation's still happening 3 months from now, let's say, that might change because they
Yeah,
might be like, we want the money now, and
yeah.
we'll do something special. We'll do a re-release in theaters. Marvel fans are very passionate, so I
Hmm.
could see them being like, we're going to support this movie.
That's
They could
true.
rally the troops behind it, something like that. Do something. Maybe it could do like extended version. That could be a possible play if you're looking to get repeat viewings. Like, here's the version right now, and then we'll release this in theaters, and we added 20 extra minutes of footage to the story. And I think that could be, there's so many different plays, and there's so many
Hmm.
different options of what they could do. It all comes down to it does come to money because
Okay.
these are, if you think about it, that's almost over half, probably just these two movies, just these two is probably over $500 million invested into it.
God.
So not cheap.
No, not even a little bit. So, on a different scale, but still kind of in the same realm, how do you think conventions, a lot of conventions, and I'm not just talking about like E3
Mm-hmm.
and the toy show, I believe one, I can't remember which toy show it is that's running this time around, but like the smaller conventions, like the local conventions that are popular, do you think they can recover from that? Because they're doing refunds and then they're hoping that next year they can come around. Do you think that could be survivable as well?
That's a really good question because there's a level to me that actually thinks the smaller ones can survive better. And I
Okay.
know that sounds counterintuitive, but these big ones are so expensive. And you look at something
Mhm.
like E3 is a great example of one where they've had, this year was not a good year for them. Or the last
Mhm.
12 months, they had the whole scandal last year where they doxed, almost everyone there,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people, both YouTubers and media, high level people that got, doxed. They had the main MC leave and not really the best terms. They had the
Mhm.
creative company come in there that they had hired to help fix it for them,
Yeah.
also leave,
Leave. Yep.
leave as well.
And
And
then
so,
Sony had also announced that they weren't gonna
yeah.
go. So sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. It's so true. I forgot about Sony pulling out too. And I think
Mhm.
a couple other companies have slowly pulled out.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't surprise me if companies like Sony and these ones continue to start doing things like kind of like how the BioWare does their one. No, it's BlizzardCon. I could see
Oh.
companies start doing that, kind of like
Oh,
how
that's
Disney
fun.
spun off theirs. They used to be really big Comic Con,
Yeah.
but now they do
Okay.
D3 or they do it's D23 is
Yeah.
the is the
Okay.
is the Disney convention. So you might see
Hmm.
companies do that. The
That's
smaller
actually a
ones, I
good
think
idea.
I could see sticking around because they probably are a lot more flexible with the way
Um,
they handle their money. They probably aren't, invested as much. And who knows, maybe a couple of conventions will merge together. I could see this being an opportunity for conventions to, I think any convention this is an opportunity for them, though, being that's not a positive taking what's a negative to make it a positive,
Yeah.
and taking some time going, okay, how can we streamline these processes? How can we do this? Because there's probably a certain level of conventions that could fade away just due to the quantity that exists. So maybe some could merge together and they're like, okay, we're gonna make this convention bigger.
Okay.
But I mean, there's so many conventions nowadays. Like
Yeah.
I don't even know what the number is, but I have to imagine that it's in what, hundreds probably,
I would
between different
say.
cities and everything.
Yeah. I would say probably more sometimes, because some cities have like 3 or 4 within a few months, not even the whole year. And so it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ones that are going to feel it initially are definitely like voice actors, actors who rely on conventions for financial. A lot of these actors that are like, I'll use Doctor Who as an example. A lot of these guys run around. I think their signatures are $100 a pop, I think, to do that. So, and they're not making, I mean, a lot of these actors they're still working, but they're not working on like the level that they used to. So, and who, I don't know what the residuals are and that kind of stuff. They're not like Friends where they're making $20 million a year residuals.
Yeah, no.
So these conventions are definitely a source of income for them. So I'm sure a lot of them are like us in the production world, going, oh man, this stings, because, they're going to be like, well, now we're out 12 months. And well, I mean, I think the CDC was saying 9 to 12 months, or not 9 months, sorry, 9 to 12 weeks they're recommended. And I think they were saying July or August. And that's if everything goes smoothly. So I do personally consider that the worst case, that long. I'm hoping for hope that everything goes on the shorter end and we're able to get things, the world just couldn't get back into it. Cause I think every day that it goes on is almost like the 2 days of recovery is, it's like the double factor.
That makes for me, like, I felt bad because these conventions are refunding the money to not only the people booths, but they're refunding the money to the audience too. And a lot of, like you said, a lot of these actors rely on the signatures, but a lot of artists too. So sometimes some of these artists, one, it's their best convention and they're like, this is where I usually make the bulk of my money, or they're like, I was supposed to premiere all my stuff and now I have all this extra backlog, and I wish there was like some type of way to like stream, like a like an auction stream type of thing for their artwork stuff. But I don't think anybody was fully prepared for this magnitude of what has happened. We saw earlier on the picture of WrestleMania. So WrestleMania has never been canceled, never been postponed. It's always been what it is. WrestleMania, the biggest event of them all for the wrestling community. And they went from, no, we're going to keep it going. We're going to have extra bathrooms and extra sanitizer and all this other stuff. And then it went to, no, we're going to hold it at a smaller scale. And then it was no more than 10 people gathered together. And they were like, they didn't know what to do. They were like, okay, what do we do? So they took their performance center in Orlando and they turned it into an arena. So that's where they've been doing their shows for the past week. It started last Friday. They did it this Monday. They'll do it again. And they're going to do that for WrestleMania too. And it's so eerie because they're still playing to a crowd that's not there. So a lot of these wrestlers are coming out going, do you love me? And all this other silly stuff. And then there's crickets. And I'm just like, that's so weird. But do you think other live shows, like basketball, I don't know if you saw basketball players, March Madness, they're playing to no crowd as well. Do you think that's taking a hit too? Or do you think those fans are like, F it, well, fuck it, I'm home, let them play?
I'd have to see I'd love to see the numbers and that kind of stuff, because there's definitely, I think that streaming can definitely keep the connections going just like we are today. But we do this anyway. So I think there's a level of that. But on some venues, it's definitely the aspect that's going to be the trick is, do you lose that connection element? One of the great things conventions that, you see all the people in costumes and the cosplay, the competitions, there's that element of being able to see your favorite characters. walking around, you know, the different quality of costumes from silly,
Yeah,
but to some people that do amazing work.
exactly.
And you just don't get that online. And so I think some things can, you know, I think sports can handle that. I think that sports is probably one of the best um, ways that you can still do it because most people watch it anyway that way. Not, well, I don't, yeah, I'll say most because, you know, even a big stadium only holds like what, 50 60,000 for basketball. Um, but yeah, definitely you lose that like crowd energy, right? So
Yeah,
that's the trick. Maybe I'll have to like fill in the bottom row with like the stick figures or something like that, you know, the
yeah.
cardboard cutouts. That's the trick though. It's something that no one's ever dealt with before. I don't think that
Mhm.
we've ever dealt with this that I know
Mm-mm.
of
Not that I
in
know of.
in memory. And also we're so connected now, you know, we do have the opportunity to work from home. That's, you know, that's something that wouldn't exist 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. I don't think it would even work as well. You know, now we have, you know, depending what city you live in, gigabit internet speeds. You know, you can transfer huge amounts of data around your, you know, home computers are very powerful. So, you know, sporting events are going to be one of those ones where do people still enjoy it without the crowd? And I think if you're a
Mhm.
diehard sports person, I think a lot of people who are into sports
Yeah,
are going to enjoy it still. Like the rest of the one I get though, that's a tricky one because there is
it is.
crowd interaction there that you're
Exactly.
losing. So that's you know, do they have to rewrite their shows in a way that they're not hyping the crowd that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Or, but you're more of a wrestling fan. So would that, do them hyping you up, is that hype you up or do you want to hear the crowd roar and all that noise?
So the first when I saw it on Friday, I didn't realize how much of the crowd does play to me also getting hyped with it. So the crowd boos the entrance or cheers the entrance and then you're kind of just sitting there like you're watching these people come down to their music but nobody's cheering, nobody's saying anything. It's like the eeriest thing. And then some people know how to work it. They just talk directly to the camera, they're talking to the audience at home and it makes sense. But then other people come out and they're playing to a non-existing crowd and you're just like you're wait because they pause, like they'll do their thing and they'll pause waiting for this reaction that they know doesn't exist, and you hear it, not like you hear the silence of it all, and it's
Right.
like, man, I didn't realize how much. Exactly, that's exactly what I did when I saw it on Friday and the first person came in. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, this is so weird. It definitely felt more like I was watching a training. Like, these people are coming out for the first time. This is what they're trying to do when they get an audience. That's how the feeling I got from it. And I was like, I don't like, I feel bad because they're sports entertainment. They're entertainers. They live for that crowd reaction. But I'm interested in seeing how WrestleMania plays out with that because some wrestling fans are fickle. You do something wrong to them and they will drop you like a hot potato. So them refunding all this money for wrestling fans. So WrestleMania is a whole week event.
Okay.
It has the Hall of Fame. It has celebrity access where you spend the whole day getting celebrity pictures and autographs and all this stuff. All of that is gone. And then you're paying for plane tickets, hotel, and the show itself. And not to mention souvenirs that you want to get to, you know, remember the event. So you're losing out on a whole experience. It's not just WrestleMania, it's a whole week-long event that people are missing out on. And I don't know, like, you know,
Yeah.
it's weird.
I would say this, you know, if anything, I would say right now is a time to experiment with ideas, you know, you know, Hollywood can experiment with, you know, voiceover, the video on demand stuff and, you know, see what the market does. Cause you're never going to, well, hopefully never have an opportunity to kind of get an idea where theaters don't exist. Cause isn't that's been a fear for a long time of things like, you know, Netflix. That's
Mhm.
why Disney wars on Netflix so hard,
Yeah.
which is, you know, they consider them a competition that are people staying home, you know, Game of Thrones, you know, that was a show that, you know, people, it was almost theater, you know, movie quality in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And some of it, you know, a lot of times it was movie quality. So
Hmm.
you have a lot more shows. And so this is a time where, you know, there's a level where experiment right now, take the time and go, okay, what happens if we do this? If we try to experiment with ideas, you know, with the wrestling stuff, or any of the mediums go, what happens if we do this? Because you're never going to
Yeah,
get a chance when you
exactly.
can't, no one's going to the movie theaters right now. So no one's escaping. So they're going to see, and most of these things now is that people are watching are very trackable, especially things like Netflix. You know, the level of metrics that they have behind the scenes,
Yeah.
you know, Disney Plus, all these elements, they have so much user data. They know when a show hits or when it doesn't. You know, that's why they don't release that stuff, because you could literally have episodes you're like, well, that's the one that everyone turned off, that
Yeah.
you would never have with conventional user data. That's why all the companies are so well, not just reluctant, refuse to release that stuff, because you can't, you know, you can look at Rotten Tomatoes and all that stuff, but you know, you get shows that have huge critic reviews, positive, and fans have low. You have shows that have the reverse of that,
Hmm.
but you can't deny. So you can't always tell what a movie or TV show is really, you know, connecting or not to people. You're like, okay, is it bombed, not bombed? You know, are people overhyping, is underhyped?
Yeah.
But nothing can deny numbers. You know, in the sense of what you're
Yeah,
seeing. You're like, okay,
true.
that this one episode had 1 million people watch it, and everyone said, it sucked, and the next episode had 500,000 on it, and
Yeah.
you know, that's the kind of stuff you can't really. So I would say this is the time to experiment with ideas. You know, maybe there's some shows out there that's been sitting on the shelf, or, you know, Disney has such a huge library, put some of this stuff out there on there. You know, that's where
That's true.
it's tricky, because, you know, there's so many streaming services too.
Hmm.
So, you know, all these companies, I think that we're going to see, I'm surprised no one's merged yet. You know, you had, like, you know, CBS All Access, you have Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus. I know there's a rumor that's been floating around, which is Apple buying Disney. I don't know if you've seen that one.
No.
I don't have put much stock in it, to be honest, but
Oh, okay.
people keep repeating it.
Okay.
People, you know, analytics have put it out there. I think it's a
Oh,
terrible idea, because Disney's in massive amount of debt.
yeah.
You know, after buying Fox and all the other acquisitions, I think they're like in $50 to $60 billion in debt.
I knew it was high. I didn't know the exact number, but I knew it was
I
like
think it's in
something
that range.
ridiculous.
It's I think they're one of the top companies out there in debt. You know, I think they're followed by, like, I think it's Comcast or something like that. I could be wrong on that. So yeah, don't quote me on that one. But they you know, they put a lot of money. You know, they bought Fox, and they paid a lot of money for it.
They did.
And I think for Apple to buy them, I think would be personally, I think it's a mistake, because, you know, I think that these companies, let Apple make products, Apple make hardware. You know,
Hmm.
I think even the Disney Plus thing is, or not, sorry, Apple TV Plus thing, I think that'll be one of the first to go, to be honest.
Okay.
They have money to support it, you know, because Apple is a very liquid company. This is probably they're probably one of the best off companies during this crisis. I think their last liquid was at least over $100 billion in just cash reserves alone, let alone actual net profit for the company. I think it's even higher than that. I could be totally wrong. But, you know, they can fund the shows, and I don't think there's any shows they've done so far that have really taken off with, you know, the public. They don't have a Witcher, a Mandalorian, Stranger
Mhm.
Things, and I don't think many of these networks have that. You know, I think Peacock is coming out here and supposedly this year. I think Warner's has a chance of doing pretty well. They have a
Okay.
pretty that'd be HBO Max, I believe they're calling it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I
That
think
is
that,
what they're calling it. Yeah.
yeah, that has a good chance of doing it. I think a lot of these ones, they're probably, I wouldn't be surprised if behind the scenes, there are some people saying, let's get this going faster than later, and then just get it
Yeah.
running, because I think people are gonna be sitting around and they're hungry for content, and
Hmm.
they're gonna be like, hey, something new, let's check it out.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's exactly what people are doing. They're sitting home and they're like, "Well, what are we binge watching?" And then a lot of people are working from home,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll have the laptop, but they'll have the TV as well going. Not everybody. Some people have home offices, but yeah. This is definitely interesting. I've been alive for 41 years, and I don't ever remember anything like this happening. So
Mm-mm.
it's definitely interesting. And it also like kind of shows what people think. You know what I mean? Like how people perceive things. They're like, oh, you kind of take certain things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And until it's taken away from you, and you're just like, what am I supposed to do now? You know what I mean? So
It's true. You know, that's the tricky thing is, you know, but luckily there is so much entertainment to watch from home or read from home. I think it's one of those, this is opportunity for people to, I know people that have working from home, and they've had, um, in different business structures, and they're like, oh, I'm really busy all the time and I don't have time to do this. And you're like, well, this is the time to catch up on those things that, you know, sometimes can be personal growth. They can be just entertainment growth. You know, don't work yourself to the bone, you know, trying to grind through something. But, you know, there's a lot of little things, you know, like for me personally, I know I'm like, oh, need to update my demo reel. There's little things like that I got to work on. You know, I'm like, well, my garden this year is going to look really good because I'm going to be out there doing some gardening. You know, there's all those little things that, you know, I don't think anybody should just sit behind a TV for, you know, 16 hours a day. I think that, but I'm also a lot more picky on the shows. I know that in the past, me and Jack were talking about it a little earlier, and I'm like, yeah, I was totally agree with him. Is that I used to be like, oh, I'll watch any show, it's just on, I'll turn it on and grind through it. And now I'm like, man, now there's so much shows, and even even in the video game space. But you know, in there's so many games now that want just you to play forever. I grew up in like KOTOR, like Knights of the Old Republic, where you play through a game and you'd finish it, and sometimes you might play it again, you know, in a while. But now there's so many games like Fortnite. You know, I used to play Destiny a bit, and but it's, you know, they're fun games, but you play forever and ever. And there's a point where, you know, people, you know, I feel like when I was a kid, I'd be like, oh, I put 40 hours in this game. That's so crazy.
And now it's like 375, and you're like, what?
Yeah. And some people have like thousands of hours, and there's totally nothing wrong with that.
No, but it's just, I know what you mean.
There is a balance where I'm like, oh man, if you put 10,000 hours into, you know, doing certain skills, you know, reading or crafts or something, you're like, you can balance out some cool stuff. So, I mean, you know, like I said, something I've been trying to do is learning to draw and stuff. And I'm like, man, if I actually put 10,000 hours in learning how to draw, I'd probably be pretty decent.
Yeah. I feel the same way too, because it's like everybody's home now. And then it was like, oh, you know what? Because now I'm homeschooling, which that's, whoo. Let me tell you, I was not built to be a teacher, and I'm learning that lesson this week. I'm like, ooh, I'm so not built to be a teacher. But after, like, we get done with the lessons pretty quick. So I'm just like, oh, I could play a game. And then it's like, oh, or I can edit this video that I've had for months that needs to get edited and uploaded to YouTube. Or I could work on my book that I've been trying to edit for months as well. You know, so you end up realizing, oh, I've got time to actually do the stuff that I need to do versus, oh, I should binge watch everything on Netflix, or I should play every game in my library, you know? And
you'll never binge it all now, because they were releasing a series a day for a while there. Like you could, and I don't think most are that. Most don't at least stand out. People aren't watching. You know, they're not. You know, that's the one cultural thing that's changed with so much material out there. Is I wonder what the next Game of Thrones will be, or the next Stranger Things will be. I think Witcher was probably the closest one, but it's only one season so far, so we'll see where that goes long term.
Yeah.
But Game of Thrones had a pretty giant, you know, they obviously, for most people, ruined that in the last season, and definitely lost a lot of goodwill, I think, in general. With the way the season went, even from just a production standpoint, you know, you can like or end, but there was definitely a lot of production issues in that last season across the board. But what show, you know, with so many streaming services, when not everyone has or wants to pay for them all, what will be the next show? What's the show that everyone be like, you know, I'll pay for this service because this show is so good.
So good, yeah.
And I don't know what it's going to be. I think they said The Witcher is very popular. But again, I think that because it has to be something that people universally, you know, they talk about like 4 quadrant movies in, you know, movies, you know, kids, young and old, you know, different ages and everything. Granted, Witcher is an adult audience, so I don't think you'll ever see that. I mean, that's definitely not something for under 16.
No. Neither was Game of Thrones.
Yes. No, it was definitely not. I would say, I think Game of Thrones, I don't know, which one's more adult? I would say Game of Thrones is probably more adult.
No, they're kind of neck and neck.
You think they're neck and neck? Okay.
I think they're neck and neck. Okay. Yeah, because
there's a couple things. Yeah, that's at least one of those ones you could cut out. There's a couple shows nowadays. I'm like, oh, if you just cut out just a little bit of the swearing, I get why. I mean, the screenshot Jack just put up there is funny because it, you know, he that line was pretty well put out. So, you know, those are the times I'm like, okay,
yeah,
delivery.
Yeah. No, definitely. So before we wrap things up, where can people find you? I know you said something about YouTube. You have a YouTube?
Yeah, I've started recently a YouTube channel. It's called Westfox. and we do kind of reviews. Me and my brothers actually, so I have two brothers, so we talk about
Oh.
all the nerdy stuff. We've been doing stuff on Picard. We've done some stuff on anime, so we kind of cover the nerdy gamut pretty much across the board, and we hope to do more of that kind of stuff because that's the thing that we for me is I love this stuff like this, talking this stuff. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. I enjoy the sci-fi world. I love the fantasy world, things like from Lord of the Rings and all those kind of things, and some of the great stories that are told through it. And so I love when you get to see good stories. I feel like sometimes we don't always get the greatest stories from Hollywood, unfortunately. And I'm also, like I said, I'm pretty picky. My wife tells me that all the time. She's like, gosh, dang it, you freaking don't like anything. And I'm like, I do. I like a lot of things. I'm just willing to be picky and critique it. And it also depends on how serious something is too. If a show is
There
going
you
to
go. Woo-woo.
yeah, there you go. So yeah, if you see that, that's if your show is meant to be fun and silly, I'm not gonna, I'm not looking to like in-depth review it. But sometimes when shows are like meant to be a solid or serious show, you're like, wait, these plot holes, I can't
get behind them.
work. Yep. I'm definitely in that sometimes. So yeah, it's all good. I know you had some questions, but the one I'll hit on, unless I think we're wrapping up. But
now Jack said we have all the time in the coronavirus world.
Nice. Well, and I'll hit the one that I know kind of goes into it, which is, what's my least favorite adaptation? And there's a level to me, which I know it's going to be kind of a weird perspective on it. But one of my least favorite adaptations is actually Thor Ragnarok. And not because the movie itself is a bad movie. I relatively enjoyed the movie, but compared to the source material they pulled from, which is actually an adaptation I would love to see, is actually, so it's kind of funny because I was like, gotcha. I would love to see the Hulk Planet, because that's what they pulled most of the material from. The Hulk Planet storyline.
Planet Hulk,
Yeah. I would love to see that because they have the cartoon version too. That was such a good version. And I think that with especially the current, not the current Bruce, Bruce wouldn't do good with it, but hipster Hulk, like that more angry Hulk, he would have been actually, I think, really good as the version that would be for the Planet Hulk movie. And I know that part of the reason why they can't do it is because licensing rights and things like that. But there's an element in there that I was like, that storyline was such a good one for him as a character, and it was just so well done that I'm like, darn it. And it's the only reason I'm sad is because since Thor stole they stole that storyline and refitted it for Thor, because essentially they switched Thor out halfway for the character of,
right.
Even though Hulk is technically a little bit in the movie, they kind of reworked the story so much that I'm like, well, they'll never be able to use that storyline, at least anytime in the near future, due to the fact that essentially it's been used. So that was kind of a bummer, as much, and there's worse. I mean, there's definitely worse adaptations. It's one of those personal
Wolverine Origins.
Yeah, there's,
that's definitely mine. I'm like, if I could just get the real good Wolverine Origins, man, life would be so great.
Yeah, there's so many adaptations nowadays. It starts to get, where's the best ones? And it gets tricky because you're like, well, is it the best source material? And I think to me, the best adaptations are ones that generally elevate the source material. And not, sometimes they, you look at something like, I think the best adaptation in the, of any medium, I think still is Lord of the Rings. I think to me is probably the most true to the original story, the books, relatively, considering you're adapting 1,000 pages, I think, of the original book and putting into, essentially a 15-hour movie now with extended versions.
Yeah.
I think that would be, that's my creme de la creme of okay, that's my bar. So, when movies are able to hit that level of adaptation, I think that's pretty good.
That's good. Yeah, no, for me, it's kind of like the Harry Potter movies. Like, they came as close as possible to the books for me, because I never read Lord of the Rings. So I didn't know, I knew about the story, but I didn't know the story. So yes, nerd alert, it happens. I am a nerd. It's what I do.
The Harry Potter ones are pretty good. I think that anytime you're dealing with young adults in a story, it's so hard to translate from book to movie, because when you see little, that's the movie Artemis Fowl. That's the one. That's the one. I just remembered it. So Artemis Fowl is kind of the comparison there. But that's the one they're not moving so far anyway.
I didn't know that. Well, I knew they were making the movie because I read the first comic. I didn't read any of the other ones.
Okay.
But I didn't know that the movie was coming out that quickly.
Oh yeah, no, it was delayed a year even. Actually, it was supposed to come out I think last year. I think they did some refilming on it or some reshoots or something.
Gotcha.
But they that movie, has a younger protagonist in it. And technically, I think in the book, I never read the book, but from what I know of the book, he's actually more of a pretty aggressive anti-hero.
He is.
And in this movie, they've kind of made him more of a straight kind of true like hero protagonist versus like an anti-hero who learns his error of his ways. But the actor, he just looks so young, and it's so hard. I think it's the biggest trick with a lot of movies is, even I know I'm gonna give you a lot of movies here, but like,
no, go for it.
I know we're talking about like they're doing the Avatar. They want to do an Avatar: The Last Airbender Netflix series they've talked about, and the problem is in a cartoon, Aang being a 12-year-old works because the show is geared towards kids. I think it's still one of the best cartoons out there, but adults can enjoy it. But his character doesn't act like a 12-year-old in general. Like he's older. And I've always thought if they were to do a movie, which I mean, they technically did do a movie that was awful.
It was.
It was a really bad movie that they changed the character names and stuff. But even, that movie, you felt like the characters were too young for what they were dealing with. And I think that's always the hard part of taking, even everything in anime to cartoon shows, that character range, anime's crazy for it, where they're like, this person's 16 years old and they've been a Black Ops agent for 4 years and they're doing all this stuff. And you're like, no, that's not how the world.
Yeah. And for me, it was Raising Dion on Netflix. That show, I'm not 100% sure how many comics there are of it, if there's comics of it, but it's so the kid's supposed to be 8 or 9 years old and he gains these powers, but it's so weird because okay, he's dealing with all this stuff. He's trying to figure out the bad guys, but he's 8/9 years old. And it's like, this isn't adding up, because I know quite a few 8 and 9-year-olds having 3 kids myself and seeing their friends and stuff. I'm like, this just doesn't, it just didn't add up in the movie. I mean, in the TV show, because one minute he's like super whiny and super needy and super kid, and then the next minute he's like, I know exactly what needs to be done and this, and I'm like, you're acting like an adult right now. So I get that translation where in the comic it kind of works, but in the TV show it just does not work at all.
I know you mentioned, I think you did an episode about Lock and Key recently, right?
Yeah.
And so what do you think of him so far? I've only seen the first 2 episodes.
So shockingly for me, one of my biggest pet peeves is a whiny character, whether it's an adult or a kid. I just hate whining. It's not fun for me to hear. But I think the youngest character was better than the older characters. Like, he seemed to be more consistent. He seemed to be more on par with his age, because I believe, I want to say he's maybe 11, 12, where he's still into the fantasy world of things, but kind of figures out, okay, this is what needs to be done. And like, I like what they did with his character. And I was pleasantly surprised, because I went in going, oh, great, another flippin' kid that's going to be super whiny. And I was like, oh,
yeah, I'm glad so far.
Better than his teenage counterparts.
No, I'm in total agreement with you. I was pleasant to see that as a child actor, so far he's been very good. The only other movie that I felt had really good child actor, I mean, there's probably other movies I haven't seen, but one movie that stood out to me was Super 8. Had really good child actors that weren't whiny. That was the J.J. Abrams one.
I was going to say with
7 years ago.
There's a train and a camera, right, or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Those were good child actors as well.
Yeah.
But then on the other spectrum of that, you have movies like, I think the was the Tom Cruise Into the World, A World of Worlds,
Oh,
and where the young lady, all she does is scream the entire time, and the
jeez.
brother just complains. He's like, "Why are we doing
Yeah.
this?" You're like, see the world burning behind us. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why we're driving this way.
I
It's
was
like,
telling Jack that last week too. Jumper, the movie Jumper. So he grabs the chick and they're jumping from place to place as people are shooting. And she let goes of his hand. She's like, "Why are we doing this? Where are you taking me? I'm not going anywhere." And I'm like, "Bitch, you die, okay? I'm gonna keep going.
that is
You die and you find your answers." Like I couldn't deal.
that is
Can't
a
deal.
rough movie. Actually, that's one of those movies that could have been interesting, but they didn't take any into account of the logic of what they were dealing with the physics
Mhm.
of it.
Yeah,
Because they're
yeah.
like, hey, he can open up the portal after you leave, and you're like, okay, cool, that makes sense. But then you're like, why would you not just portal yourself? Because he shows them going high in the elevation. You're like, just portal yourself like 1,000 feet in the air, do another
Yeah.
1,000 feet in the air, another 1,000 feet there, and they'll never be able to track you. No matter, you just, whenever you're going home, just do a couple of
Yeah.
sky jumps, and then they can
Yeah,
never
that
sit
makes
there.
sense. No, but she was like definitely a whiny character. But once you keep going with Lock and Key, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like the kid stays consistent. The
Good.
teenagers are the ones that I was like, all right, get them out of the house. Like I don't even care what happens to them. Like they're so annoying.
I could see that. I could believe you there, because they definitely have the, teenage characters are so hard. They were doing the thing with the we had that period where it was like every teenage movie, into the dystopian teenage movies. You had the Hunger Games, you had Divergent. There was probably there's two other ones, I forget what their name.
Twilight. That was
Twilight.
supposed to be teenage, young
There
adult.
there was the other one too, the wall. The wall one, like in the maze. They did the
Oh,
maze,
okay, yeah.
and there's so many, and they all, like I said, I can barely think of them all because they all had the same feel. Into the world, these little kids or young adults are stuck in the situation, and a lot of times, again, books, you can do that because in your brain as a reader, you kind of up age somebody. But like you said, when you see kids, you have kids. When you you see kids, and you're like, oh, yeah, a 12-year-old's not
Yeah.
doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of
I
it.
number 4. Yeah,
Oh,
that one
yes.
actually had potential, and I mean, it wasn't good. Like, it wasn't a
No,
good movie,
no,
but
but I agree with you. It had potential. Like I could see it had it been changed a lot.
yeah, I at least had a mystery in it that I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, that's always the thing mistake movies do too, is if you're taking a series of books, that's why it's so hard. Jack and me were talking before, and we were talking about, do you ever see Samurai Jack?
Yes.
So Samurai Jack is one of my favorite. Like, I'd love to see a quality live action adaptation done, but it's so tricky because you have to put the time into really planning it out so that when people watch that first movie, they feel satisfied and they want to see the second movie, but they don't feel like they're left on a cliffhanger. Because what happens is, you see these movies like number 4 is a great example of it. I think there's a dragon movie too that had this similar thing where they kind of don't answer any questions in the story.
Oh, I don't know
Because
which one you're talking about,
oh,
but
yeah, Jack brought up they did a Star Wars show, and that wasn't actually the best. It was the 2003, I believe, Cartoon Network special. They were all 10-minute segments, and same director of Samurai Jack.
oh, I didn't know the Star. I don't remember the Star Wars one.
Yeah, it's hard to find actually because I don't think they've ever sold it on. I think I had a copy of DVD like 10 years ago, and I think
It's on YouTube.
I think I let someone borrow it, and then I never got it back, which is when you're like 18 years old, you're like, oh, whatever, I'll find it again. Yep, there's a screenshot of it, and yeah, you find it on YouTube or find it because wherever you can find it to watch it, because it is the Jedi at because they're talking about doing the High Order, so we can keep some new stuff. Have you seen that? Or the High Republic?
Okay.
And in this show, the Jedi feel like a legitimate source of power, like the level of, in this scene coming up that has a screenshot, Mace Windu literally takes out an army of droids by himself.
Oh wow.
Like a legit army, and it's a beautifully animated
okay, I'll check
thing.
it out. Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, anybody out there who's watching, if you haven't seen it, it's the 2003. It's not the Clone Wars. I think it's actually called Star Wars Clone Wars or the Clone Wars.
Okay.
It's a variant of it, but it came out in 2000, I believe 3 or 2000, somewhere in that period, and it has this art style. And I think it was Ginny Dinikoski, I believe, was the director. He's the same guy who did Samurai Jack. Also did I think Dexter's Laboratory and all those ones.
I can kind of see the artwork in that, in the Dexter's and the Samurai Jack. It has the same kind of artwork to it. Yeah. Okay. I didn't even know about this. I'll definitely check that out. Okay.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Clone.
I love it.
Yeah. Look at that. I love it when I learn.
Jack's
I
pulling great graphics
know.
for us to show.
He's earning his paycheck. That's amazing. No, I definitely want to check it out because there's so much out there that I'm like, didn't know about that. Didn't know about that. Didn't know about that. Definitely, I live my life with the I didn't know about that phase.
There's so much out there. It's hard to, unless you're on it every second, it's so hard to keep up with everything, especially when it gets kind of out of the the mainstream general audience space where it's talked about. Like, I don't think many people talk about the show anymore unless they're super nerdy into Star Wars. Like, and I'm not even super nerdy into Star Wars. I used to. Like, I like the movies. I love the original trilogy. I read some of the books, but I'm not into all the comics and stuff anymore. There's some of these things have such huge expanded, material that unless you're like a hardcore lore lover,
Yeah.
that you're like, okay, I want to know every element of this. I want to know the story, how it ties together. You're going to have to be like a specialist in it. You kind of like, okay, are you a specialist? I'm like, nah, I don't need to be a specialist. I want to enjoy the good stories, enjoy the elements of it. And I do love when they have good adaptations to cartoon stuff, because sometimes those can, I think the, like even in the Marvel space, there was the Avengers Assemble cartoon that came out in the early like 2010s or not 2000. Yeah. Like 2012.
Early. Yeah.
And that was such a good cartoon. Like even, I think that they pulled a little, I don't know which, they pulled a lot of storylines in that one. And I think it was such a solid job done on that one. Even characters that are, I think that character wise, when they announced the Captain Marvel movie, I was hoping they were going to make her more like that character. And they didn't. And I don't, personally, I didn't really love the movie. It wasn't an awful movie. It was just an okay movie. But I think that had they put that character more towards the one in the cartoon, I was like, oh, I was really hoping that she'd play more that character, but she kind of played a different version of the character, which is fine. Everyone can do their own thing. Just like Thor. I mean, look at Thor's went from a much more serious character and those kind of things. So now he's kind of a comic relief character.
Yeah, he is.
It is. And we'll see where that goes. And I mean, he has his movie coming up here. What's it called? The
Love and
Thunder.
Love
and Thunder. I mean, and I don't know if that's going to get pushed back for maybe with all these delays.
I would think so. Yeah.
I don't know when they were supposed to film that one. That could be, I think they were on a whole year break, but you could see some of these ones. I mean, maybe we'll get a chance for them, all these studios to catch up on their writing too. I mean, that's where Star Wars failed. The big, you look at the history of, at least in my opinion, I know some people like the movies. I wasn't a huge fan of them, but you look at the history. I mean, and even
we're gonna have to have you back on the show to talk about it because I want to know why. But we'll have you back on the show. To talk about it. But go ahead.
But you look at the history and even the space of when they started when they bought Lucasfilm. They when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they were fighting through directors and they were ready to go in like 6 months. They were like, oh, we're ready to film this stuff. And I think that's where if they had waited a year and put more time into the story group or allowed the story writers to have more time, put a full, really coherent plan together for the 3 movies, I think they would. I think the whole Star Wars fan base and space would be a completely different story right now than it is, with the sense of the, I mean, right now you have them writing the comics and stories just to fix the plot holes that they put into the movies. And, some silly stuff is being said and written out. And you're like, why?
Yeah, I've been trying to keep up with the novel that's getting ready to release, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting take on it. And I've never read any of the Star Wars books or comics. I've only stuck to the movies themselves. And I'm getting ready to start watching the Clone Wars because I was told that it's like super good. So I'm getting ready to actually start watching that. But I've been looking at these updates of the novel for Star Wars that's getting ready to drop here in a couple of weeks, I think.
They released an early copy to people that went to one of the film festivals, I believe.
That's
where the leaks are coming from, because people published them. And there's little things that are like, ooh, and
okay.
Again, it's the one of the problems it's one of the tricky things. I shouldn't say problem. I think it's a little harsh. It's one of the tricky things that that companies are doing now, which is they want to open up. They want to, brand things on so many different levels. They want you to be, okay, if you want to be caught up in Marvel, you need to watch the TV series.
Yeah.
You need to read the comics and to understand everything. And I think that they tried to do that same thing with Star Wars, we're like, okay, we're going to explain different elements and side stories and prequel stories and comic book stories. And people like me who really, I can tell you, all the little details and stuff that I know from the movies, but I don't have time nor desire to read 20 different things. And that's the tricky thing with all these series is I think that's why I'm saying the test will be interesting for Marvel with this kind of stuff will be what percentage of people will watch WandaVision? How many people will watch these shows? If they're good, I think people, if they're really great, I think people will go and enjoy it. But there's a side of me that goes, but if they're not good, I can't grind through it. Like there was a show that Netflix had on it or Amazon Prime or something. We watched a couple episodes and we just dropped it because there's a certain it's just like, okay, these characters are dumb. Like and you just.
Oh, I've been through my share too. Because I'm like you. I'm picky, and I'm picky with anime. I'm picky with everything, and I'm the same way. If you don't have me hooked, like I'll give you more than the first episode. Because the first episode, you're kind of buffering it. I'll give you to 3. If you don't have me by halfway through the 3rd, I'm out.
Yeah, that's what my wife's way of handling it is. She's like, 3 episodes done on it, and it's kind of the way because you give a little bit of faith into it. There's always shows that you're just like. If it doesn't catch you at the beginning, sometimes it just really doesn't catch you.
Yeah.
And also that's where recommendations for friends come from, right? Because you're like, hey, like we're recommending the Star Wars one, we're like, go watch that and you're going to love it. And then if you could watch the first, one and be like, wow, it doesn't hook. We're like, well, it gets better. And then might watch 2 and go, okay, it does get better. Or something like that. But then there's shows you're like, well, let's just try this one. Like Lock and Key. So far I'm enjoying it. But if it totally dropped off and I was like, okay, this is unwatchable, then I'm like, well, I'm not watching season 2, or you just stop watching it. You just kind of get bored.
Well, so it's not unwatchable. There will be things that like I said, we're not besties, so I don't know you that well.
No, that's fair.
But with everything that you said so far, there are going to be certain elements that you're going to be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's just plain stupid. And I can't wait to talk to you about it.
Like, okay. I know we're about to get up here soon. I know the one element that I was telling my wife, I'm like, what decade are they in? Because I had a question. I was like, is this supposed to be the 80s? Because a lot of shows keep doing the 80s, but I'm like, no, the cars are modern and they have certain elements. And the reason I had to question that in my brain was because she keeps asking people questions, but she doesn't use the internet to check out why things are adding up. Because she's asked like 3 questions. She's asking people like, who died here and who are these people? And I'm like, if that was me and I have like 2 different stories come from people and people are like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Like, I'd be like, Google.
I'd be like, death 10 years ago, water drowning children this city. And I'd be like, well, Google says nothing. So that's odd.
Yeah. So it's supposed to, so the comics were written, I discovered them 2010. So it was written somewhere like right before 2010. So it is modern time, but I think what they're trying to do is not make it easy because they want that story. But I still feel like if she would have looked stuff up, you can see it right there, the news article and what happens. So shut up, Jack. Jack always makes fun of me because I'm such a loser because I do these things. But anyway, but yeah, there are key elements to the show that I was just like, this is utterly dumb and ridiculous, but it is a good show. I've told people watch the show before you read the comics because it's so different and the show is good, but you'll be pissed off that it's not like the comic.
Yeah, my wife just has the first comic book, and I know she was like, "Oh, everything that happened in this episode doesn't even happen in until everything." I think she was like, "This element is the entire book of the first one." I'm like, "Oh," and we're in, But that, like I said, without reading that adaptation, I'm like, I don't know yet if it's good or bad.
yeah. And that's why I've been telling people like, watch the show first, then read the comics because you will be pissed. You'll be like, this is no good. But the show is decent. I liked it. I didn't feel like I was pushing through it. There were, like I said, moments that I was just like, I can't deal.
I do like the, at least so far, the villain girl, Echo. I don't know her name yet. I liked her in The Well. I'm not sure with her out of the well yet, but her voice in The Well was really good. And I don't know if she does. I looked her up. I was like, who is she? She hasn't done a lot of work.
No,
I'm like, oh, she should look into do some voice acting because she has a really good voice. And I was like, she should do some more of that kind of stuff because it was a very like sultry sounding vibe to it, but also she did a good job with like the eerie like type thing. And I'm like, Yeah, that's good. And so it'll be interesting. I don't know her. I know she's like a main character in the series. So it'll be interesting to see
Sure, yeah.
where she goes, if I like her or hate her. Because villains are tricky space.
Yes, they are, because it's like you either love them or you hate them, or you love them and then you end up hating them, or vice versa, or something like
Hmm.
that, you know. But I liked her character. Her character to me felt consistent as well.
Excellent.
It was they did her and the youngest character very well. Everybody else, I'm like, maybe they just put all their time and effort into her and the littlest one, and everybody else be damned. But yeah, that's her.
Nice.
All right, Joel, it's time to wrap it up.
It was great talking with you. I
It
know it's
was
amazing
good
how fast
talking to
time
you.
flies.
It
It's
really
crazy.
does. It's so good to have a good conversation. I've had several, and I definitely enjoy this. And I do want to have you back. I want to have you back so we could talk Star Wars movies. And I want to have you back when you're done with Lock and Key, if
Okay.
that's okay with you.
Totally. No, I can talk Star Wars pretty much for hours.
Let's do it. Let's totally do it. Once again, find Joel on YouTube. I believe there's a link somewhere around here. We'll get that
But
for
it's
you
Westfox, so
guys.
you'll find it.
Oh, there you go. And thank you guys. Go wash your hands, because it's been an hour since I've washed mine. Go wash your hands. Stay safe. Joel, thank you so much. Like, share,
Thank you.
subscribe. Issueswithshow.com. Love you guys. Until next Wednesday, I'd blow you kisses, but my hands are dirty.